the success of the show is really three things. It's terrific writing, which is actually more challenging than you would think. It's not just being able to write a Marvel show. It's not just being able to have a strong female lead who has to be funny and dramatic and an action hero and all of those things. But on top of it, there is the combination of the fact that part of your cast is British, part of your cast is American, part of your cast is British that's playing American. And when you put all of those elements together as a writer, it really does provide you the kinds of challenges that Agent Carter has not only stood up to, but I think really surpassed. The second is that there's just an extraordinary love of detail. And I think that that really speaks to the crew and the art department and the way that the show is produced. It is not an easy thing to do a period piece. Every single element has to be changed out, whether it's a small thing like a telephone or whether it's an entire building. And it's not just visual effects that makes those things happen. It's clothing, it's hairstyles, it's every single person that you have, every car, every vehicle, every single element that you have has to be worked in such a way so that it feels that it's not only of its time, but also has a timeless quality to it, because we want the people that are watching the show to feel like they're not sitting at home going, why didn't you just pick up your cell phone and call somebody? And then really when it comes down to it, it's about Haley. You can't do this show without her. She is capable of handling almost anything. As I was talking earlier about creating a character who could handle funny and drama and fights and reality and grounded and all of those things, you have an actress who, as you know, I always like to say, she's a movie star that we've crammed into a television set. And it's just the gift that keeps on giving. There's absolutely nothing that she can't do. Every single actor that she works with just wants another scene with her. And that probably is the thing that connects the show best with the audience. One of the things that we talked about when we first sat down was what was the best way for us to be able to move to a new direction and yet still feel like we were in the same place that we were, for those of you that loved season one. And that's a very difficult kind of alchemy for you to be able to figure out. And I think it was Michelle Fazekas who said, you know, the very simple phrase, which is, Los Angeles is the city that you go to in order to be reborn, to be able to pretend that you're anybody you want to be. And so when you start with that as your idea, the idea of bringing Peggy Carter, who is trying to start her life over again in her own way, maybe even without even knowing that's what she should be doing, but certainly moving beyond what she dealt with last season, which was getting beyond Captain America and her love of Steve Rogers, and now being able to realize that she was going to be someone who the SSR respected, who the SSR wanted her to be able to take on cases. That wasn't mean she wasn't going to suddenly disappear from a chauvinistic world. There was still going to be a glass ceiling that she was going to have to burst through. But that's something that I think we all can relate to, that we all have that moment where, you know, and I say this with all due respect to the people that I work with, but I think we've all had that moment where we'd like to be able to tell our boss, no, we really do know how to handle this if you would just give me that chance. And I think that's what Peggy does for us. She, in her own way, kind of emboldens us to be able to go and take that extra chance, to be able to get on that plane, go to Los Angeles, take on this new case, and with all of the complications that arise, allow for her to succeed. One of the fascinating things about Whitney is that she is, on the surface, this diva, this Hollywood actress that, you know, sort of spoke of the time, which I think is one of the fun things about being in Hollywood in the 1940s. It really was, in many ways, the golden era. And so if you were a movie star at that time, you were sort of the same as royalty. You were able to behave any way you wanted to, go to any party, go to any restaurant, do anything you desired you could have. And so Whitney, in many ways, personifies that. But what makes her so interesting is that that's just a facade. That in fact she's actually quite brilliant, and she's actually capable of so much more than the world around her allows for it to happen, which probably sounds a lot like our own Peggy Carter. And whereas Peggy would use her skills as a force of good, what Whitney does is to create a world in which there's her own best interests, which are not necessarily the best interests of the common man. And through a series of incidents, Whitney grows even more powerful, and not just a threat to Peggy in the way that she is one step ahead of Peggy. She actually becomes a physical threat to Peggy, and that's what makes her, I think, a great villain.